Well, hello, chat. Hope everybody's having a good night. This is Mungunzo with Flipping the Switch, and I've basically this is Liquored Up and Live. What we do is we just talk video games and talk some other great stuff, and we're gonna have a good time. And got a very special guest tonight. This is OJ from Player Essence. So OJ, tell the chat hi.
Hey, what's up, chat? Welcome, welcome. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate you. What the hell? Sorry.
Everything okay?
What? No, there's something going on my phone. Sorry, it just randomly my phone just started going on YouTube out of nowhere. It's like, what the heck? That's why I was like,
Oh, that's good.
what?
So now I'm an
Yeah.
old man, chat. So you're gonna see that as time goes on. So let me see in the chat. Just make sure people can hear us. Can anybody hear us in the chat? Gonna
I'm
do
an
that
old
old.
man. I'm an old man too.
Oh, I know it, man. I know it. I think. Yep. Okay. Say yeah, ALJ Crew sound off. Can everybody hear us? I always like to start like that. I know it's lame, but I'm like I said, I'm fucking old, man.
It's all good, man.
All righty. I'm just gonna assume they can. So hopefully it sounds all good. Okay, so we're good to go. So all righty, man. So thanks for coming on. Just want to appreciate it. So tell I think everybody here, heck, I think you're have more people that know who the hell you are than know who I am. So just pretend like they don't and tell them a little bit about yourself, man, and we'll get rolling from there.
Yeah, I'm just a normal dude. I just like to, I run Player Essence. A lot of you guys might already know. But yeah, I'm just like to cover Nintendo, like to cover RPGs. And it's interesting that you're doing this because the reason like my channel actually started because I just like talking about video games to my friends. So back in the day, there was no way to actually do what we're doing right now, right? We just
Right.
did that amongst ourselves. So it's pretty cool that we can do something like this now, you know?
Yeah, it's amazing, man. Like the internet has opened everything up to us. And
Yeah.
I had gamers growing up where I was, but you'd meet a few people that really shared your interest, and then you would get their phone number so you could just talk about it all day long. And
Yeah.
now we've got the entire world for that. So that's what I like to do too. And basically, that's what I want to get into a little bit here. So first and foremost, I guess we'll start with, a little bit of how exactly did you get into the video game hobby? How did that start? Like, where did you get your start? Because you say you're into RPGs, and I am as well. But we both know nobody starts at those games. So what
Yeah.
was your gateway into video games?
My gateway was like the arcades back in the day, man. I used to see Pac-Man, I used to see Galaga, I used to see all those arcades, and it was super cool. But then when the NES came out, that's when it went into overdrive. Like when I first played the original Mario Bros, but that was cool. I was like, oh my God, this is great. But it was like Mario Bros. 3. When I played Mario Bros. 3, I knew this was going to be a lifelong love because there was nothing in the world like it. You know the movie The Wizard, right?
Oh
When
God,
I first yeah, when I first saw that and they were hyping it up as if it was like the greatest thing, from since sliced bread, I was like, I gotta play this game. This game is gonna be incredible. And when I played it, it was you could fly, you could run, you can turn into a frog, you can swim, you got a hammer, bro. Like there was nothing else, like what else was like it, right? There was power-ups, but not like this. How smooth the scrolling was on the screen, right? Like going from side to side, it was super smooth scrolling, super smooth gameplay. I mean, it was challenging. There was tons of different levels. Mario Bros. 3 was the game that made me say, this is a lifelong passion.
we had a very similar trajectory, OJ. Because basically, I got an old hand-me-down NES box. I still remember the games it contained. It was Mario and Duck Hunt. It had I got Mario 3 later, and then I got had Defender 2, the
Mm-hmm.
port from the arcade, had Excite Bike, had Contra, and had Mega Man 3, or some of the
Mm,
games it had. And
mm.
I learned how to play games by doing the two-player mode, which I sure hope they have the back and forth two-player mode in Super Mario Wonder. Essentially, what I would do is my dad was player one and I was player two, and I would mimic and emulate his movements on the screen, and that's how I learned how to play games and moved upstream gradually. And when you say Mario Brothers 3, you hit the nail on the head. That was the game that kind of solidified it. Flying, being the first time I saw where you could go up and get the whistle and fly through the ceiling and warp to different areas. The fact that there it was, I mean, Super Mario Brothers. People forget the historical context of that. Mario Brothers was a big game when it came out. Like, you had whole levels, you had transitions from one area to the next, like Mario was going on a genuine journey. You had everything, man, that was going on in that game. That was a big game because prior to that, you had like Jump Bug, you had Pac-Land, I think, but you had nothing that actually had the blue sky, the scrolling stages, and then they took it to the next level and almost made Mario an open air game in terms of Super Mario World with the open world map. Mario 3, same thing. So I had a very similar trajectory to you. So it's good to see that. So now, how did you get from there to RPG games and specifically JRPGs?
Yeah, basically, I had played Final Fantasy and I thought that was dope, but it was kind of difficult to play back then, right? But to me, it really wasn't until Secret of Mana. When Secret of Mana dropped and it was an action RPG, and your friends could play, your brother could play. I remember getting a multi tap and just being blown away. Like, how we can all play this RPG. It was always single player, right? Everything was always single player, or you have to take turns. But this was an RPG that you could play multiplayer. So Secret of Mana really, really got me interested into RPGs. And then it was like I played Breath of Fire, I played other RPGs, I played Lufia, I played all sorts of stuff. But then when Chrono Trigger dropped, I was like, this is the pinnacle of gaming. I don't know if it's ever gonna. I told myself even back then, I don't know if I'm ever gonna play an RPG that's better than Chrono Trigger. And to be honest, I don't know if I have. I don't know if I have to this point. And I've played so many, but when Chrono Trigger dropped, it was like, yeah, this is RPGs are like for me. This is my game. You know?
Well, and I think you're right in terms of, has that ever been topped? You got to look at the way those games, two games in particular in that era. And I love Mario RPG. I'm glad to see it coming back. But when I think of that era and that golden era of RPGs, I'm really looking at Chrono Trigger and I'm looking at Final Fantasy VI. If you look
Yeah,
at the pacing on those games, look at Final Fantasy VI just as an example. In the first hour of that game, you have done the invasion of Narsh. You've had a Moogle strategic battle. You've escaped to Figaro Castle. You've had the sacking of Figaro Castle. You've had where the castle sinks in the sand and you escape Kefka. You've gone through the caves and you've met with his brother Sabin and fought Sabin's rival in martial arts. All that happens within the first hour, hour and a half, if I'm being generous. The pacing, there's so much that happens in that game, and the pacing is so good. Same with Chrono Trigger. Look at all the things that happen at the beginning of Chrono Trigger and just how
yeah.
fast that moves, the pace it moves. And if you look at RPGs today, even good RPGs, like I see Sea of Stars and I'm interested in it, but I got to tell you from the demo, it's got a little bit of a more glacial pacing. And it's like if you're trying, and I'm holding you to the standard that you set. You stated you want to make a Chrono Trigger, you want to make a Final Fantasy VI. Okay, I'm going to hold you to that standard. And that means we got to get this moving a little bit more in terms of that pacing.
The pacing of the game is off because the text, the dialogue is just a lot more, right? So the pacing is not going to quite be the same, and like it doesn't have the depth that Chrono Trigger has. Like with everything, it doesn't have that. So while it's good and it's inspired and it's kind of like it, I don't know if it beats it out. I think it beats out some of the classic RPGs, but it doesn't beat out Chrono Trigger. Like I don't
Oh,
think
no.
it's gonna. Yeah, I don't think it gets even close. I think that it's in the same, like if they're it's in the same ballpark, but it's not close, you know.
Yeah, and again, it's that guidepost trajectory. So I've always said, people always talk about, where is the next big hit coming from? I'll argue that the next big hit comes from the past. There are guidepost games, there are trajectories in gaming that have been entirely abandoned by the games industry at large. And one of those trajectories is a game like Chrono Trigger, that RPG that respects the player's time, has that nice snappy pacing, and just has that picture perfect in terms of battle tendency, everything. And that's one of the trajectories. The other one I often mention, you saw me playing that crusty ass game, and it is a crusty ass game, but it was Star Control 2. And there's things you can do in
Yeah.
Star Control 2. Mass Effect, the doctors in Mass Effect literally quote that as one of the games that inspired them to make that. Star Control 2 was two guys in their basement. And that universe, there's still things that you can only do in that game that can't be replicated in an HD 3D. And that's kind of what Sven Vick was getting at with Baldur's Gate 3. If you look at the way HD gaming and 4K gaming has moved, a lot of that trajectory has set gaming back because it is too expensive to do a system like Ultima 7. And to do that system where you can do all these things, It's just too expensive in terms of that to do in 4K HD. So in some ways
Mhm.
it sets it back, and that's where you see these indie studios starting to do it. They have the ambition, but sometimes it seems like the indie studios are lacking the budget in order to do that.
Mhm. Absolutely.
So yeah, it seems like we had a similar guidepost in terms of there. The other thing I want to talk to you about is a little bit about the importance of Mario. Um, I'm so happy that we're getting back to Super Mario Brothers Wonder, and that's important. Not new Super Mario Brothers, not Super Mario whatever. It's Super Mario Brothers Wonder. And I love that title because not only is it kind of bringing in Alice in Wonderland, which was one of the original inspirations, was the literary nonsense stories that Miyamoto and other folks at Nintendo read. But it's bringing in that literary nonsense inspiration. It's bringing in all kinds of that. I'm talking Gulliver's Travels. I'm talking Wizard of Oz. I hope it pulls from that stuff. Jack and the Beanstalk, when you climb the beanstalk and you're up in the sky. That's the thing. All of these great trajectories come from the past. There's nothing new under the sun. And if Nintendo would just get back to what originally inspired them, instead of just throwing these corporate brain farts at a wall, I'm just glad to see it. And the fact that they're giving this 15 minutes, I've not seen a 2D Mario game get a dedicated direct in so long. I'm trying to keep my expectations in check, but I'm about the old man fanboy right here on it. I'm so excited. But what do you think
Yeah.
about Wonder?
Yeah, I think it looks incredible. It's good to finally get a different style. I think it's going to be something that they've probably wanted to do for a while now, and they're finally, moving away. It's tough when bucket loads of money are coming into your bank account, like, and people say, well, "This is what we want. We want new Super Mario Bros." It's tough to move away from that when it's doing so well. But the fact that they've actually been able to move away from it now and get something different, I think it's going to pay even more dividends going forward. So I think they're definitely going to not regret doing
No,
this
no,
because
I promise you they won't.
yeah,
And the
they're
thing
not going
is,
to regret it because it's
and,
going to do so well. So I'm very happy in that sense.
and I hear you, man. I mean, but they've moved away from it before. It's always interesting how fast Nintendo can move away from something that works when they want to do it. So Miyamoto has a famous quote in Iwata Asks. He says, "I've already made that game. I don't want to make that game again." And he was talking about 2D Mario, which is why I didn't get a fucking 2D Mario game for 18 years on a home console. I was
Mhm.
ignored for 18 years. It's part of why I got out of this hobby for so long. And part of my reemergence into the hobby was not only Wii Sports, but the emergence of New Super Mario Brothers Wii. And at the time, I said, like, okay, this is kind of a half-ass looking effort, but I don't care. It's the first 2D Mario game in 18 years on a home console. But Nintendo,
Yeah,
you can only get away with this once. Now, that's sort of true because they now on one hand, it didn't sell the Wii U. New Super U did not sell Wii U's. But on it couldn't overcome that hardware hurdle. But on the other hand, it's doing very well on the Switch. So it's half true. But I think Nintendo is going to be I think they're going to be just like they were surprised with Breath of the Wild and what that did. I think they're going to be very very surprised in what an inspired Super Mario Brothers, it's back to its root, is going to do. If you look at the macroeconomics, Super Mario Brothers sold 40 million copies. And we talked a little bit about this on stream, and I loved hearing that because you're the first person I've actually heard, aside from myself, talk about, like, oh, it's a pack in. Well, yeah, you say it's a pack in, but that makes it more impressive because now Super Mario World is a $200 game in 1991.
hmm
It's more impressive. Wii Sports was a $250 game in 2006. Now, if you look at the macroeconomics of that, what did Wii Sports end up selling? Something like 79, 80 million copies?
yeah, like 80 something million.
Yeah,
It
80 million
wasn't. It
copies.
wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't
So,
packed in everywhere. It was like
yeah,
Japan. I think it was. It was not a pack in.
so if you do the macroeconomics on that, I which I've never done, I need to do that. But same with Mario, 40 million easily becomes 66, 70 million if you adjust for population, and that's just population. Keep in mind there was an Iron Curtain. Keep in mind there was cold markets. Nobody knew what the hell a Mario was. Keep in mind that there were China was not open, and actually China only opened after the Wii fully opened to consoles. They had a console ban for a long time. These are things that matter, and it's things I don't really hear the industry talking about because the industry basically does direct comparisons because that's what the investors want to hear. It's like, well, this Metroid game sold this much. It sold 3 million copies. Never mind that Metroid sold 2.87 million copies in 1986. But we're not going to mention that because that makes Metroid Dread look like a failure. And I don't think Metroid Dread's a failure. I think it made money, but in terms of where Metroid was as a brand, I still don't think it's recovered from Metroid Other M. I hope it does. I hope it can continue that trajectory, and I hope they add another million to Metroid Dread because it's probably my favorite Metroid game. But the macroeconomics can't be ignored. We've fallen a lot of these brands. Pikmin's doing better. Zelda's way doing better. Luigi's Mansion's doing better, but a lot of these legacy Nintendo brands are still in the shadow of the macroeconomics of their past selves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I definitely see what you're saying there. The only thing that I would say to that is like Metroid was like, I remember Metroid. That game was discounted to damn near nothing. Like right after it came out. I mean, it didn't sell 2 million, or whatever it did. It didn't sell that right away. It was a game that you kind of just got it when you got it. That's what I remember from it. I know I didn't buy it day one. It wasn't a day one game.
Now wait a minute. No, so it was. I'm not sure if it was day one, but it was. You're saying that game was discounted in 1986 and 1988.
Oh, absolutely. You can see that game.
Are you sure about it?
I 100% remember that game just not being like a full price game. Nobody buying that game. I don't remember that game like flying off of store shelves or anybody even talking about it. It seemed like that game was a slow burn to get to where it's at. Even like Super Metroid was a slow burn as well to get to where it's at. And Super Metroid was a game that was hyped. It was actually really hyped up.
Well, the 2.7, 2.8 million is for the NES. So that's not counting the digital. That's just the NES. But you got to keep
the NES. I think Metroid, the original Metroid. I don't know what the original. I think it was like 2 million, right, for the original Metroid, right?
Original Metroid was like 2.73 to 2.8. I don't have it in front of me, but it's right in that.
Okay.
Area. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. In 1996. Now here's another.
Yeah, that's great for what it was for that time period. Yeah, that's really good. And obviously
that's like 5 million adjusted, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously it would be great if Metroid did way better, but that was over a course of time. That definitely wasn't right away that they got that. The NES had a long life too. I think that Metroid Dread doing 3 million in that first year, like the best selling Metroid game in the first 6 months. If there was discounts and if they actually get it discounted or have a Nintendo discount line like they used to have, I think that game is going to do way better because when they did discount it, it like shot up the eShop charts. So Metroid's one of those franchises where it's never going to really be as popular as a Zelda or as popular as a Mario or as popular. It's never going to be as hell. It doesn't even have as much appeal as a game like Pikmin. Pikmin just had bad.
That is luck. So sad. That is so sad.
Pikmin just had bad luck. It launched on the 2 worst selling consoles. It just had bad luck. So that was the problem with Pikmin. Not that the games were bad. It was just we launched on the GameCube, we launched on the Wii U. So it doesn't even have the appeal of something like that. That whole franchise, that whole Metroidvania, like if you look at like Castlevania, you look at like Hollow Knight, you look at all the games that are in that genre, none of those games even do better than Metroid Dread. Like none of those games have even sold better than that. So that genre is a little bit more of the smaller end or niche side. I don't know what Nintendo can do to
and Metroid and Metroid Dread is now the number again. That's why I was trying to correct people. I'm real anal about that. Metroid Dread is now the second best-selling Metroid of all time when macroeconomics are considered, and it may be the number one by the time it's all said and done. That's a great point in terms of did it sell over time, and I think you're probably right because here's something that I actually neglected. And I just now thought of it. Another hidden history a lot of folks don't talk about because they're a lot of people are PlayStation babies. The cartridge shortage of 1988. I distinctly remember people literally, you can look at old clips in the news. People would stand in line and people would go across state lines to get Super Mario Brothers 2. And yes, The Legend of Zelda 2, a game that is constantly called a black sheep by today's standards. But with Metroid, that was one of the games impacted by the cartridge shortage of 1988. A lot of those OG Nintendo NES games didn't even get a damn reprint until the end of the NES's life because the 88 cartridge shortage lasted 2 to 3 years, depending on the market it's in. And so that cartridge shortage certainly could have impacted that. So that's what I'm saying. The sales of these Switch games, I'm saying they were depressed. I'm saying these were brands that came out of nowhere. Nobody knew what a Metroid was. Nobody knew what the fuck a Zelda was. Nobody knew what a Mario was. They didn't have brand recognition. They didn't have open markets. They had a iron curtain sealing off half the world. And they had a Atari crash from 1983 that had just happened. And they literally had to Trojan horse their way into stores in that area.
But they also had a 99% of the They had a iron grip on the market too. Like there was
Also
the
important.
NES had
Yeah.
no competition. There
Yeah.
was because of the crash. There was literally
Fair.
they own 90-something% of the market.
No, that's
So there was like
real fucking talk, man. Yeah, that's true. And that's something like we were talking about just on the chat. Is if you look at Sonic the Hedgehog, and I said, yeah, when I talk about Super Mario World being a failure in regards of what is the job of a marquee hardware? Job of marquee hardware is to sell the software. The hardware is like Yamauchi famously said, right? The software, the Mario is the hardware is just a box you buy to get to Mario. Did Mario sell that box? And 40% attach rate, somebody in the chat said. So, yeah, it did a good fucking job of selling that box. But you know who did a better job of selling their box? Sonic the Hedgehog. And
did
I'll
it?
never forget that. It did. It actually, yeah, Sonic the Hedgehog outsold Super Mario World, something a lot of people don't know. So, on one hand, Mario
Which
World
Sonic are
was
we talking about?
OG
Sonic.
Sonic, just Sonic 1.
Okay, Sonic 1.
Yeah. Sonic 2 and Sonic
Okay.
3 undersold Mario World. But they outsold Yoshi's Island, which was the sequel. But then Donkey Kong Country came and kicked everybody's ass.
Yeah,
And that's what
that's true. But
that's what won the console war.
Donkey Kong Country didn't sell more than Super Mario World, though. Did
No,
it? I
no,
don't
but
think it did.
it was that late bloomer that showed up and like crushed 14 million sales right in the twilight and snatched it away.
I looked it up. So Sonic sold 24 million copies.
Yeah.
Mario sold 20. I don't know, man. If something sells 24 million and something else sells 20 million, I don't think that's a failure because they sold 4 million less. I don't know. That's just my opinion when it comes to sales.
No.
I think if something else, I mean, because like if that's the case, then damn near, I mean, like everything compared to
I am a bitter old man splitting hairs, OJ.
Oh no, I got you. But like, if that's the case, like everything failed in comparison to GTA, like or in comparison to like the Tetris.
Wii Sports.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, to be fair, Minecraft. Yeah. And that's the thing. Like when I talk like this, people got to realize I'm looking for the big score, baby. I'm looking for that next Tetris. I'm looking for that next OG Mario game. I'm looking for the big fucking score. And so that's what and Mario World should have been that. And so I think, and if you think about it this way, and I love Mario World. God, I hate that I'm doing this, but Super Mario Brothers 3 gets compared. There's often a comparison, and people still can't agree on which of those two games is the better game. That to me settles it right then and there. A 16-bit game should absolutely destroy an 8-bit game, and it didn't.
And I think that if you look at it, yeah, I agree. Like there's some people that really ride for Super Mario World, but in terms of what they did with Super Mario World, like I don't think it's any fault of Nintendo or Super Mario World itself. I think that the game was good enough. It did what it needed to do. I remember playing it when I got it. I thought this was way better originally. Now, obviously, when you look back and you look at Super Mario All-Stars, that can kind of taint your vision on what you think about it because Super Mario All-Stars remastered the game and it was way better. And if you talk about the original OG, I think Super Mario World's better. But if you talk about Super Mario All-Stars, that stands up, but that's a little bit better, and it stands up better to Super Mario World, which I do think that there are people who feel like played Super Mario All-Stars and was like, okay, well, this is my Mario 3, right? And they're thinking, well, yeah, Super Mario All-Stars, it's remastered. It's much better than what the original one was. But yeah, to your point in terms of what you're saying, like I get that, but I don't think it's any fault of Super Mario World. I think it's just Sega coming out and kicking butt, man. It's called competition. That's what I think it is because Sonic was revolutionary. Sonic was Sonic. It was something that people loved. So it's competition. So in my opinion, I think that, hey, that's just more competition on the market. The Sega Genesis had an aggressive marketing campaign. It did a damn good job of circumventing what Nintendo was trying to say. And people just decided, hey, I'm going to play this instead. And I don't know, man. To me, that's just, I don't think it's any fault of Super Mario World or the marketing or what Nintendo did. It was just Sega coming out and doing a good job and not letting Nintendo get 90 something percent, which that should never happen. There should be no console company that has 90 something percent of the market. Like that's not good for, I don't think that's good for anybody involved, to be honest. Like I want all systems to do well, but 90 something percent of the market. I remember back when I was younger, I remember Sega coming out and kicking butt, and I was like, heck yeah, man. I want to play Sonic. I want to play these Sega games. Plus, they had a bunch of sports games that were really good as well on the Genesis. So it was positioned itself as like the more mature console, and people bought into that back then, you know? Oh, you there?
Oh, there you are. Can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you now.
Yeah,
I
sorry,
didn't hear you for
my
a
clown
second.
ass hit my mute button. But
Oh,
anyway,
okay.
what I was saying is that look, the most devastating thing that came out of that actually wasn't even that. It was the fact, yeah, Rush Dog just said in the chat, restricting third parties. Yeah, there's bad blood between the third parties and Nintendo typically that goes all the way back to EA. Trip Hawkins, back in the NES days, was actually told you either make a game for the NES or we'll fire you and get somebody who will. Almost fired from his own company because he hated the NES so much he didn't want to make a game for it. The moment another competitor became viable, Nintendo lost all the sports games to Sega. It was a
Yeah.
devastating blow. You have Ken Griffey. I'll always remember Ken Griffey Jr. and Ken Griffey Jr.'s winning run. But
Great baseball series.
oh God, yeah. But in general, the sports games absolutely migrated over to Sega Genesis, and that was a big part of it. That was a big part of the blow there, and that only continued as Sony kind of reared their head with what happened as well. But yeah,
Oh yeah.
but
Sony came in and took everything.
that was my era though, homie. I was in that era literally for probably, oh God, I probably spent 18 years in that era. I didn't move on past the NES except for a few big games on the GameCube and N64. Instead I explored the endless ocean of the Super Nintendo's library, became an explorer, and didn't really emerge from that until the Nintendo Wii came out. So that's kind of where but I've always been an observer in Nintendo because as a business interest, I'm always kind of looking at what they're doing. So yeah, for sure, man. So now we were talking macroeconomics. So here's my ask of you, OJ, and I want to see if I can do this for you. So can I get you to start doing some of these breakdowns, because nobody listens to me. I'm just some random asshole on the internet. But if I could get you doing this, it would up your game so much, dude. And literally nobody else in your space is doing this. And I'm too fucking lazy to try to get big. So I guess my ask is, let me live through you, man. It's so easy to do a quick macroeconomic breakdown, and it shatters so many myths about what these guys are saying in terms of sales. It's incredible. So there's my proposition. It's ultimately up to you, but it's a super quick thing to do. You could probably do it on your own.
Yeah, you know what? I'll be honest, my background isn't in macroeconomics. It's in marketing and it's in the now, right? So
Okay.
I'm not very good. It's in the now and it's in comparing it to what happened. So it doesn't matter what the economics was or what the inflation was or whatever. I mean, those things are secondary to what you're doing now and revenue being made and how things are going right now. That's just how marketing is.
Well,
right?
and I get the market. I get the marketing angle. I deal with marketers all day long.
I don't know how to do macroeconomics. I'll be honest.
Well, and here's the marketing angle. Hey, what I'm talking about isn't good for the investors. It looks a whole lot better to the investors to say, hey, Metroid Dread sold 3 million copies. That's the highest selling Metroid game of all time. That looks fantastic.
Yeah.
When you start pulling in the past, it starts to water down your achievements, and that's not what they want to do. But yeah, nobody else in the space is doing it. So
nobody on the space even wants to accurately report sales. They're definitely not going to want to do macroeconomics.
No, that's my point. So you literally have so think of it in terms of blue ocean and disruption, OJ. So there's a whole red ocean, which is all these people jacking their jaws about, okay, hey, direct comparison. Let's do direct sales comparison from 2023 to a game from 1986. Yeah, it looks good. Best-selling game. The blue ocean, the untapped market, is in doing exactly what I'm doing. I'm just too fucking lazy to actually put any effort into actually getting there and making.
I need to learn how to do it. Like I mean, the thing is, I wouldn't be confident.
I can show you. Yeah, I can absolutely show you.
Absolutely, you should. Well, you should do some. You should. This is the perfect opportunity to do at least a video or two. Not right. You don't got to do it right now, but like a video. You take some time, do a video, and put it up, and just compare from there. I think that would be very educational for people.
I'd have to actually learn how to actually do videos, though.
It's not hard. You can do a stream. You can just record it and act like it's not a stream, and then just cut out the parts where you're like, or whatever, you know, or
yeah, editing's
just cut out those parts.
Yeah, editing's a real bitch. But so I know you're also an anime fan, so I've got to hit you with this. My favorite anime of all time. Well, I've got a couple of them, but the one that is just currently all-encompassing to me right now is one you know well, and that's JoJo.
Yes, JoJo Boys. So, let's go.
JoJo Boys. So, what is your favorite part of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and what is your favorite villain?
My favorite part of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure has to be the ending of part 5. Like, wait, have you seen part 5?
Oh yeah, I've seen them all, man.
Yeah, Golden. That ending made me think about my life. I think that was the most philosophical ending to anything in JoJo. Like, I didn't expect it, right? JoJo does have some deeper meaning in some of the stuff.
Oh,
but like
God, yeah.
Yeah, but part 3 is so comically stupid at times, like it's just so dumb at times. And like, Joseph, like Jonathan or not Jonathan, Joseph, the first, like he's such a not the first one, the second one. He's such a goofball and like, oh my God, and like all these weird stuff that happens. There's some serious things, but I didn't expect part 5 to be like that towards the end. Part 4 is very good too. I like part 4. I like how more of it's a soft, like the main JoJo is not such a muscle bound, what I'm saying, like meathead,
brick shit houses that are 3 times bigger than everybody.
Yeah, he's so much softer, and I love that about Golden Wind too. I love that about Giorno as well. He's just kind of like more not like the other ones. So the ending is best. The ending is so good. And my favorite villain, oh man, there's so many good ones. It's hard to pick one, but obviously Dio is just hilarious. So probably have to go with Dio. I know it's a terrible answer, but I have to go with Dio.
Dio's a good answer, but for me, it's got to be part 4, and for villains, it's got to be Yoshikage Kira.
Yeah.
The thing is, I feel Kira, man. I just wants to live a quiet life. If only he wasn't a fucking serial killer.
Yeah.
Like, I get it, man. I absolutely get that. I love my anonymity. I love just living that nice, quiet life. But
part 4 is really good. I do like part 4 a lot.
So
it has such a different tone to it. It caught me off guard after watching all the parts of part 3, because part 3 is really long. I was kind of like, okay, let me just. I took a little bit of time to get into part 4, and then once I got into part 4, I like marathoned it. I took some time because part 3 just it just dragged. It kind of dragged. It's like there's 2 separate parts to part 3. So it just dragged a little bit. I don't know how much you like part 3 or not, but
I like part 3. I had a few issues with part 3. The first and foremost, it had a villain of the week until like the very end. Now at the very end, when they got to the mansion, it really picked up.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
But in terms of what part 3 did, like it was always hilarious, like picking out, okay, who's the bad guy going to be? Well, it's the brick shithouse guy. Yeah. There's a bunch of normies, and then all of a sudden there'll be this jacked up, roided up brick shithouse. Like in the sailor suit or whatever. It's like, yep, there he is. That's the bad guy. There's our guy. Just look for the brick shit house. You know who your villain of the week is. So stands were supposed to mask that, and it didn't, because there was all these normies that were 3 times less big than everybody else in that series. But I did like it, in particular, starting with the Vanilla Ice fight, the Polnareff and Iggy versus Vanilla Ice.
Yeah,
probably one of the best stand battles in the history of that series. That hit
very good. Man. Yeah, very good stuff. Like the ending stuff with like Jotaro and all that is very cool.
That like is iconic.
Yeah, it's very good. I'm not a fan of how Jotaro treated his mom and like what he said to his mom at the beginning. That already pissed me off. Yeah, that already kind of even it's like anime, it's whatever. But to say that to your mom, that already made me like, all right, okay, hold up here.
Nah, you can't treat your mom like that.
You can't call your mom that. Like, what the heck?
No, you can't do that. How's Mama Essence doing, by the way?
Mama Essence is doing great. She's at work. She's a nurse, so she works in that shift.
Long hours, man. Well, give me 1 second here. I'm going to take a little intermission while I refill here. I promised Rush Dog I would start the stream with this. I forgot. So in terms of what I'm drinking, I am drinking a 18-year-old Japanese whiskey tonight. It's a Kuriyoshi single malt Japanese whiskey.
18-year-old?
Yeah. And that's what I'm having tonight. What are you having, buddy? What are you drinking with me?
I'm drinking water.
Water. Well, you always health conscious, and I respect that.
Yeah, water.
So yeah, aside from the drinking, I'm trying to get a little bit more, especially as I get older, trying to get into working out. The girlfriend's got me doing jiu-jitsu rolls, things like that. So that's keeping me a little bit more in shape, but that kicks my ass, man. You ever roll? It's something else, man.
Yeah.
But in terms of working out, like you try to stay in shape. What's your routine like typically, and how many times you hit that in a week, man?
Usually I wake up in the morning around 6 o'clock, 5:30, 6, and just get out, start running for about an hour. And then I'll lift weights for like 45 minutes to an hour. And I'll usually do that like at least 5 times a week, sometimes 6, but usually 4 to 5 times a week.
Now I gotta hit the weights, but I'll tell you, I could definitely use some running. I could definitely get some running more in my workout. But it's hard for me, man. You get older, it gets hard on those joints, man. But they say run in
Oh
the
yeah.
grass instead of running in the sidewalk. That's what I've been told. But
It's a little bit better because the shock, like the concrete's harder, so it's a little bit better. But sometimes it's hard to find grass to run. Like if you live in, or you might have to drive to go find like a good patch of grass or go somewhere else.
for sure.
I just run on the concrete.
So, and we talked about villains in JoJo, and that's one thing I want to bring up in terms of Nintendo and any other franchise is the importance of villainy in gaming. I don't think you can undersell that, and a lot of my issues with a lot of games come from when they mistreat that. So, if you look at like a iconic villain for me, I think of somebody like Kefka Palazzo from Final Fantasy VI, for example.
Mhm.
And literally, I kid you guys not. Kefka literally taught me about genocide before school did. Like that guy literally nukes half the world. Like that guy is crazy. And he was an interesting villain for me because like if you look at Kefka at the beginning of that game, he's basically a clock watcher. He's a disgruntled employee of the Gestal Empire. He doesn't like his job. He's always looking for a shortcut, and sometimes those shortcuts take horrific ways, like poisoning the kingdom of Doma. But seeing somebody with that nihilistic and that absolute clock watching attitude grow in power as that game went on, you just knew in your gut that things were going to go really bad. And they did.
Yeah,
And they
yeah,
sure did. But to me, the most interesting part of any game is, or any story really, is going to be the villain. Now this has been known as far back as the Greek stories, Heracles, the Odyssey. This goes back to as far as Shakespeare. The villain has to be one of the most interesting parts of your story because the hero oftentimes is cloaked in good, and so he has to have that good persona. Whereas the villain is going to be a character that is a little bit more complex. And it's a character that you can almost reason with, if not for the fact that they're batshit insane most of the times. But to give you a good
yeah,
example,
absolutely.
Darkness in Mario, for example, a lot of people don't remember that in Mario Brothers, Bowser, King Koopa, was a wizard who turned the Mushroom Kingdom into blocks. So think about this for a second. Every time you break a block, are you killing a toad? Because that's what the book
Yeah,
says. That's
yep,
dark, man. That's
that's
dark.
pretty crazy.
When you go to Super Mario Brothers 3, you literally go to World 8, which is like a darkness hellscape. Bowser has an army. He's got tanks. He's got airships. He's got boats. He's like an invading force on the Mushroom World. Then you go to Dinosaur Island, and Bowser's in a clown car. He's a guy in a clown car. They started to take that evil away from Bowser, and they started to make him more and more into a clown. And I get it; it's for the kids, but I think it lost something in that. It's part of why I gravitate to Ganon more because Ganon never did lose that evil. He never did. I'm a little, and maybe it makes sense. I haven't played a lot of Tears of the Kingdom, so I'm hoping it can explain some of this in terms of how the hell they got from the formless calamity that was Ganondorf to Ganondorf being back again. I'm sure they addressed that, but I almost hate it in a way because I love the idea that so much time has passed that Ganon has literally faded into nothing but pure malice. I love that. And now he's back and he's rational again. And I'm sure he's an awesome villain, but it just seems like in terms of mythology, it seems like a step back to me. But what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I beat the game. I don't want to spoil anything
No
for you,
spoilers.
but yeah, it's explained, but I don't. Some people don't feel it's explained very well, or they don't do a great job with it. But I did watch recently a breakdown from Zeltic. He has a 3-part breakdown.
Oh, he's done
Yeah,
this. Okay, I'll have to catch that. Yeah, I
of
gotta
the
catch.
story and everything, and it explains it way better than anybody else that I know have explained it. And it's like, oh wow, that's very interesting when you start looking at the nuance, because there's some things that's not exactly told to you, or maybe you might miss it. Zeltic misses nothing. So
No,
so it
that's
was pretty.
that's the lore beard for sure.
Yeah, he's the Zelda dungeon master. He's the Zelda lord, so yeah, it was interesting there. But yeah, I mean, I can definitely see it from your side, like in terms of what you're saying. To be honest, I never, and I'll keep this a buck, I've always felt that Zelda's stories are not um I don't play Zelda for the story. I kind of play it for the lore because I think the history's cool and like the timelines are cool, but I don't play it for the story in game. I just kind of play because the game's fun and the gameplay is fun. So I don't really pay attention as much. And then once I beat the game, I'll just watch somebody who knows more. And I'm like, oh, okay, I get it now. I've always felt like when I first started playing games like Golden Sun or games like Xenoblade or games like Fire Emblem, those had better told stories. Those had voice acting later down the line.
Well, those
yeah,
are
those were
yeah.
Those were always better to me than like how Zelda would tell their story. So I've always been interested in like the lore and like the background of Zelda and like the split timelines and all that. I love those videos, but the actual in-game stories, I honestly sometimes don't even know what the hell is going on. And half the time I don't care. And that's how it was for me for Twilight Princess, Wind Waker, damn near every single Zelda game I've played. I legitimately don't care until once I'm done. And then I watch somebody who knows more about it explain to me all the lore and backstory that I'm like, oh, wow, that was great. But I just play the games because I find them fun,
Here's the thing about Zelda. And you mentioned Xenoblade. That's a great foil for this. I love that as a foil for this because what Xenoblade Chronicles is that is character-driven storytelling. If you look at where that inspiration comes from, it comes from things like Prometheus Unbound, Count of Monte Cristo, very character-driven stories, right? The essence of Zelda is going to be in King Arthur. It's Sleeping Beauty. It's the Sword in the Stone. It's Labyrinth. It's mythological. It's not narrative storytelling. It's mythological storytelling. And so the character driven aspects of it really don't fucking matter in legendary storytelling. I was talking to my buddy Nish Quick, and I told him in his live chat one time, so we were talking about story in Zelda, and I get heat from this. Even no matter where I go, I say I really don't care about Link's shitty friends, generally speaking. Now, one person, Jay from Cold Nights Gaming, he actually has got me a little bit. My mind changed on this a little bit because he's actually found some really heartfelt narratives, especially in Breath of the Wild. But in general, please explain to me the character of King Arthur. Please explain to me the characterization of Guinevere. There is none. It's legendary storytelling. And so Zelda being based on legendary storytelling, that's where it should derive its inspiration from. Every time it tries to get into the weeds of character and narrative, it's not going to do well. I've always seen Zelda actually in terms of how I've looked at it. I never cared about Hyrule Historia, dumb shit. My whole thing is what Legend of Zelda is every single game is a oral retelling of the same legendary story. And I think that gets to the heart of what Zelda is. I wish Nintendo had done it, but here's the good news: it's the death of the author, right, OJ? So the moment Nintendo puts it out into the world, it's not theirs anymore. It's mine. It's yours. It's every gamer out there to make of it what they will. And that's a liberating thought. I think that's an encouraging thought.
Yeah, absolutely.
But all righty. Well, I guess we should maybe check out the chat. Did you have any questions for me? Anything you'd like to ask me? I'm not the most interesting guy in the world. I try to be a little.
No, you're very much interested. I don't know if I have any questions though. I think we had this is your show, so I'm just here to whatever you want to talk about. I'm down.
Well, I just want to give you an opportunity to pick my brain on anything. Is there anything you want to know in terms of what I'm looking at? And if that's the case, you can ask away. If not, we'll get to the chat.
All right, real quick. If you can say this, I know it's probably a cliche question or anything, but out of all systems, top 5 all systems can be Nintendo, Microsoft, Sony. Top 5.
Say that one more time.
Top 5 systems doesn't matter.
Top 5 systems.
Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo, Atari doesn't matter. Top 5.
Okay, so my first is going to have to go to the Nintendo Switch.
Okay.
I've never bought so many fucking games in my entire life as I have on the Nintendo Switch. I have a sunk cost. That's part of why I get so bent out of shape and butt hurt and ass mad and big mad about the fact that there's going to be this Switch 2. And I guess we'll talk about that before you go briefly, is because I've got such a sunk cost here. And I guess the Switch doesn't disappear, but
no, it doesn't. And It's
Son
probably
of
going
a
to be backwards
bitch.
compatible. Your lineup is going to be fine. You'll
But
be
I
able to
want
play
to,
whatever you want.
but I want to see it beat the DVD player. I want to see it beat the
It,
DVD
it still
player.
can. If they so the DVD
It can't.
player,
It can't.
it can, because the DVD player, it sold well after. Like, it didn't hit 150 million when the PS3 came out. It was well after the PS3 came out that the DVD player hit 150 something
Let's
million.
see, we're forgetting the macroeconomics. What year did the PlayStation 2 come out? Right. That's a lot of population growth, man. Chinese market wasn't open to PS2.
Yeah, I think right now it's 130 million. So it needs about 29 million. That can be done in the next 3 to 4 years.
For the direct comparison, yeah. But when you're looking at
easily.
Well, yeah, easily. And I think that's going to happen. And I think Nintendo's going to scream about it, and they should, because it's an achievement. But if you look at the population growth and you look at the macroeconomic factors, it would actually need something to the tune of like 210 million.
Nobody looks at that when you talk about the best selling systems of all time.
I'm the only one.
Nobody, because if that's the damn the NES or like the Game Boy or something like that is the greatest.
Okay, so
Game Boy sold 120 million, almost 120 million. It came out in 1989, right? So
right, no, exactly, yeah, no, you stack the macroeconomics on that.
Oh yeah, nobody looks at it that way. So they just look at it. Whatever you sold is what you sold, and that's what you're going to be compared against.
So all right, so Nintendo Switch, Super Nintendo will always be my second love. NES,
okay, NES,
Sega Genesis,
I like it.
Nintendo Wii.
Oh, the Wii in the top 5? What?
You fucking bet. You fucking bet.
God.
The Nintendo Wii was a revolution, and the Nintendo Wii.
Okay.
Listen, so hear me out, man.
Okay.
Nintendo Wii, the Wii proposition. Iwata gave the heart of the gamer speech, and do you remember what Iwata said to the games industry? Do you remember?
Yeah, in my mind, I'm a business the business card in my heart.
That's the speech. It's one of the greatest speeches anybody's ever given this piece of shit industry. And what he said was, at the end, he accused the games industry. He said, "I fear we are only making games for ourselves now." That's what he said. He said the Wii proposition, the revolution proposition, is that we don't do that anymore. We make games for normal people as opposed to the obsessive freaks that the industry has propagandized as hardcore gamers. We make games for everybody. We grow the market. We grow the industry. And we avoid the macroeconomic downturns that are coming, which happened in 2008, which is going to be happening again very soon. And we do that because there's more customers in this hobby. And the games industry, rather than listening to that proposition, went full hell on development with HD graphics. And that's what led in 2008 to losing, I think it's like 220 studios. Devs closed, mass layoffs, THQ drawn and quartered, because they had an opportunity to sell good games at good prices to everybody, to the expanded audience. And they chose to spit on Nintendo's direction, and they turned their back on it. It's not only that, but they gaslit the Wii. The entire industry gaslit the Wii and said that, oh, we need more. We need this to be for hardcore gamers. We need a Wii Pro. And Nintendo, not saying they listen, because they listen to their numbers, but they went that direction too. And it was a disaster. And its effects are still being felt. And that's the problem that's my big fear with the Switch 2. Like, we mentioned, the Switch 2 and, where that's going. And I get with what you're saying. I'm starting to finally warm up to the fact that this is probably going to happen. But think about what's all going on in this industry in terms of that. You've got really turbulent macroeconomic waters going on. And it's only getting worse. Like, one of the things I do in order to protect my investments, I do a sector rotation strategy. And right now, in order to stave off some of this, I get into commodities futures. That's essentially what I'm doing in order to stave this off, is I get into commodities futures with sector rotation. It's not working anymore because of all the money manipulation going on with the various governments across the world. So even there, I'm getting my ass kicked. And so are a lot of investors.
Yep.
Now, you're going to put a console out in that atmosphere. You're already seeing what's happening to Sony and Microsoft, where the software numbers are dookie. There's nothing going on there.
They don't got any games.
Yeah. There's going to be.
They don't have any games.
Yes,
they don't
I
have
know.
any games.
I know. It's not looking good, and I hate to see Nintendo jump into that. Now, one of the points you always make is that the pandemic does show. You're like, well, actually, the pandemic happened, and the games industry grew during the pandemic. That's true. That's very true, and I acknowledge that. But think about it from this angle. Let me show you a different angle on that. In 2008, there was no mass shutdowns due to a pandemic, and so all of gaming's competition was still opened up. You still had the movie theater. You still had the concert. You still had going outside. You still had world travel. You go anywhere you wanted. With the pandemic, all of gaming's competition, save books, which also rose significantly, everything shut down. So gaming literally had a captive audience. Television, gaming, and movies, or television, gaming, and books had a captive audience. That's not going to happen again. What we're going to have is eventually the money manipulation is going to not be able to cover up the damages being done to these economies, and we're going to suffer another recession. And when that happens, I am not entirely convinced of gaming's foolproofness of it because of what happened in 2008.
Yeah, I definitely see it from that angle. But if you're Nintendo, if you're these businesses, you've got to get something out. Like, it's just at some point you can't just keep riding the same system for forever. This is already way longer than Nintendo's. I mean, look at the Wii to the Wii U. Look at the GameCube.
My argument is that was a mistake. They fucked up there.
They definitely messed up. That's why they're taking longer. That's why it's been longer.
Okay. So you're saying they are taking longer. You're saying they have done it, and they're near.
They have it.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
It's going to be. Let's just say they release in 2024. That's going to be 7+ years. It won't even be 7 years because it'll be March. Will be the 7th year. But calendar-wise, yeah, it'll be 7+ years that'll be from the Wii. Like, to me, in my opinion, there's nothing wrong with releasing something that's a bit more powerful and that can play some different games. And if it still supports what you've done, there's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Just like I said, Microsoft and Sony do it, and they have not had an issue. There's no reason why Nintendo can't do the same thing. In my opinion, at least, there's no reason why. And at this point, developers are actually asking. Like, I know for a fact, I've spoken with at least 3 developers that they're like, hey, we're asking for something a bit more because our game, we could get it on Switch, but it's going to take so much time and it's going to take some effort. Like, if we had something a bit more, it would be a bit easier for us. And I've spoken to, like I said, a few different developers that have said that and are waiting. And now they have confidence in Nintendo. A lot of them did not have confidence in Nintendo coming from Wii U or 3DS to Switch, but now the confidence is sky high. And I think that some developers and indie developers in particular, they're probably still going to release games on the Switch. Like, you look at Sea of Stars, right? That just came out. There's been on Twitter, they just announced 100,000 copies sold. Where sure as hell wasn't on the on the Xbox and PlayStation when those were on Game Pass and whatever, right? So a lot of that was probably on Switch. With the next Switch that comes out, you're probably going to see games like Sea of Stars or whatever the case is. They're going to come out on the Switch too. They're going to come out on Switch too. They're going to come out on the Switch. So I don't really think it's going to be too much of a problem. Just get the system out. It's like an upgrade, like an iPhone to me at this point.
It's a sustaining innovation.
Yeah, it's a sustaining. Like, just get it out there and see how it does. And whatever lumps that you've got to take, that's why you got to be smart about it. They've got to make it to where it's not Microsoft and Sony. They go for broke with their next systems, right? It's a super expensive development. I'm not expecting the Switch 2 to be some all-powerful, super mega computer or anything.
Well,
I'm expecting it.
It won't be. And the reason
it won't be.
And this is what I mean, but this is why I kind of question the direction of a sustaining innovation, which based on what Eurogamer's saying, it looks like it's going to be that sustaining innovation that you've all been saying. But my question about that is how we have a battery tech bottleneck. Now, Chino, somebody who follows me on Twitter, actually has done some great work on this where he says, well, you can make up for the battery tech bottleneck, the fact that battery tech hasn't improved since 2016. You can make up for that technically in the fact that the chips consume less power. And so that's how they probably do that, is what he's told me. Now, again, I'm not a developer. I don't know how accurate and how true that is, but he seems to know what he's talking about. And he actually has that background. His name is Chino on Twitter. Great guy. So that may be one way to do it. But then also, if we're not getting a big upgrade, what's the point of the sustaining innovation if it's not a market upgrade? That's the same problem that the PlayStation 5 and the Series X and Series S or whatever the hell they're called is running.
Well, those are definitely, it's, I think, to the eye, in terms of development, like resources and all that, it's pretty substantial, right? I think that, from what, like, MVG, who makes games, it's a pretty substantial bump over. Now, games themselves, yeah, those aren't anything too crazy or more
Because
innovative
it's too expensive.
over. Yeah, those, like, so to me, the power is all there for the developers to do interesting and good stuff. We just have to get the developers to actually do that, which there's some stuff that's coming up that looks pretty cool from a gameplay perspective. But to me, with Nintendo, at least, I think it's just kind of like their time to do it. And
Right.
when they get this next thing done, when they finally get this next system out and it's there, I think people are going to be very happy with the system, because Nintendo really isn't changing the design philosophy. They do not want games to cost as much as Xbox and PlayStation. And a lot of I think some people might be disappointed in terms of what they see at first. But when they start seeing the frequency of games that blows away Microsoft and Sony,
right,
people will be like, okay, no problem. Like when they see the next Mario, for example, right? And it's running like pure 1440p, 60 frames per second, but it looks just barely better than Mario Odyssey. It looks, obviously there's some more detail here and there and all that, but it's not like it's like, oh my God. But people will be happy because, like, wow, they're going to do innovative things within the gameplay. Like, yeah, the more power is great, but the gameplay is going to be what really separates the system. And now actually getting that more stable. You're going to get the same great innovative games that you got on the Switch and all that, but now they're, instead of playing Xenoblade at 30 frames with some dips, you're probably going to be playing it at 1080p 60 frames per second with some dips. It's going to be, but it's going to look similar. It's the Nintendo's not going for broke when it comes, like, they're not going to be making God of War Ragnarok or Horizon or game, like, they're not going to be spending the money to make games like that. Zelda maybe, and that's about it. They'll spend that money. Zelda and Smash Brothers. Zelda, Smash, those games are obviously going to have super high budgets, but everything else is going to be, hey, look, we're looking for gameplay innovation and just far more stability and probably a gimmick or two, right? Probably a new gimmick or two here or there.
Well, here's the irony. I might actually you're absolutely right. Inadvertently, the high cost of game development these days might inadvertently get me back to what I want to see, which is that focus on innovation and disruption and that expanded audience again. We could actually get that by accident. That's actually, I never thought of it that way, but that's awesome if that happens.
Furukawa did say that they want to innovate each time when they want to innovate. They want to try something fun and something new with each of their systems. So I think that's going to happen again. I don't think that there's any reason to really worry too much about what they're going to be doing, because Nintendo, they're set on games. That's why they're taking it. Like, I know about 4 to 5 games that are they're pretty much ready to go. Nintendo did not want to launch them, at least not right now. Maybe it's a cross-gen, but maybe not. But it's very similar.
That's the thing. They've got to have some software guns ready.
They've got some good stuff ready. From what I understand, they've got some good stuff ready. And they wouldn't launch a system. Furukawa is so much more shrewd. Now,
he's like me, man. He's an evil king of numbers, man.
Oh my God, he's so shrewd. He doesn't want to talk to us. I don't know if he even cares about. It's like, I don't think he even cares, which is fine. I don't care. You know what I'm saying? But that's why you don't see him in the Nintendo Directs. He's not about playing around and doing all that type of stuff. Not that that's a bad thing. I love that Iwata was like that, but he's not trying to force it, And that's why the Switch, from what Eurogamer says, the Switch 2, it's the Switch. They're not. I had so many people telling me that the Switch 2 was going to be some type of crazy thing. Nintendo's going to do something. I'm like, no, not with Furukawa at the helm. Heck no. He's going to want something that is safe. He's going to want something that's going to, hey, look, we can make some innovation here and there, but don't make it the main thing. He's going to want something that's stable, that follows up, because he is an incredibly shrewd businessman, and he's not going to do anything too crazy. I do think there's going to be some interesting innovation, but I don't see them going too far off what worked, and just having the games. Just have that big 3D Mario, have that Mario Kart, have the games, and you'll be fine. Everything usually works.
He's making them do 2D Mario. He's making them do a real 2D Mario. That's the thing. Furukawa with Iwata, it seemed like it was daycare time. It was playtime at Nintendo, which came with a lot of great innovations. But Furukawa's the guy that just flat out says, no, here's the thing. Like, you're going to sit down. You're going to make that Metroid. You're going to make that Zelda. You're going to make it, and you're going to make it what the market wants. And it's nice to see. Like I said, if the Switch stops tomorrow, OJ, if it stops tomorrow, I got my Metroid. I've said it since my days writing on the Super NES Hub. I said all I want is a good damn Zelda, a good 2D Mario, and a good Metroid, and I got it. To be fair, I got it. So
took all gen, but you got it.
I got it. I absolutely got it. And you mentioned you mentioned MVG. So you mentioned Modern Vintage Gamer. I tell you, I'd love to pick his brain on something. I guess we'll end on this now. I've sucked about an hour of your time.
No, it's all good.
But if you could ask him, great thing that like you saw the Metal Gear Solid collection on the Switch, right? You saw that piece of shit.
Yeah.
So if you look at it, an observation that somebody else that tweets me, Rush Dog, made is if you look at the size of those files, like they're literally, there's nothing on the disc, literally nothing. Like not even the MSX games, which are kilobytes, OJ. There's
2 gigabytes on the disc
for an MSX game. So what is going on with these developers? And again, this is, I don't know, because I'm not a developer. That's why I would want to have this discussion with an MVG. And maybe you could do this.
Sure.
Because this goes into conspiracy territory, but I feel like all this power isn't for us. I feel like this power and these specs are for the devs. Because I look at these modern games, and I got to tell you, with very few exceptions, I don't see a lot of the next level like you would see leaps from generation to generation. The 3D was a leap. I didn't fucking like it. I hated 3D Mario at the time, but it was a leap. I can't deny that wasn't a technological leap forward that you could see with your eyes and you could feel in the gameplay. But now there's not much of a difference to me between a game on the PS5 and a game on the PS4, which is why they're all fucking cross-platform too, by the way.
Yeah.
And so
the thing about, go ahead.
My point is, because I'm a little long-winded here, but my point being, I think what's happening is that these huge specs that the PS5 is offering isn't being used to make better games for you and me. What it's being used to do is to allow the dev to de-optimize their games. So now they don't have to work hard and optimize. Now they can have games that are, this game's 160 fucking gigabytes, and here's a 300 gigabyte game. And the game could, if it was optimized, be 80 or 70 or even 50 gigabytes. But no, we don't have to do that. We've got the PS5. We've got the Series X.
No, you're right. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And I don't think you have to be a developer to say that, because the proof is in the pudding, right? The proof is in what we're actually getting. Yeah, there's what you're saying is correct, and I agree with you. The specs are there for the developers. We do get we can get games at 60 frames per second. So
yeah, and this is where I'm going to get in the ass of the audience and even myself at times, and you and everybody. Why aren't we fucking punishing this, guys? Why aren't we punishing this bad behavior? We are not a captive audience. Don't buy this shit.
I think that some people are, but I think that there is obviously there's some great advantages for gamers for having higher specs, right? Having a PS5 game compared to a PS4 game. Like, you look at God of War Ragnarok on the PS4 compared to God of War Ragnarok on the PS5. If you're playing on PS5, it's going to be like, upscaled 4K. You're going to get 60 frames per second, rock solid. I think PS4, you're not going to get that. So as a gamer, that experience is obviously better for you as a gamer. However, you are also right. It's right on both sense, right? As a gamer, you do get some nice advantages. You do get those 60 frames per second. You do get those higher resolutions. That stuff is great. Games are still going to play like they already played, but you do get some nice benefits. You do get faster loading times, all that good stuff from a gamer. However, from a developer standpoint, obviously it makes it, you have to do less work. These systems will make it. Metal Gear Solid is a perfect example of that. It's like, it's a PS2 game. You know what I'm saying? And then it was ported to the PS3. Yeah. Switch isn't as powerful as the other systems, so they just did less work.
You literally
they didn't want to do the work. They did not want to do the work to get it to 60 frames per second. They did not want to do the work to get it to 1080p. Like, there's no reason why that shouldn't be 1080p, 60 frames per second for PS2 games.
The reason
that's
is
ridiculous.
because we tolerate it. as
Well, we'll
a
see.
consumer
We'll
being
see if people
tolerated.
buy that on Switch. Like everybody might not buy that on Switch. You know, like after
And I'll
that.
tell you, and it puts me in a bind. That's why I said I'm not immune from this shit, because I never got to play Red Dead Redemption. Never got to play that game. Didn't own those systems. So I want to play it, but at the same time, I don't want to support this bullshit.
Yeah.
So
Does Red Dead does it download on the cartridge? I think it's on the
I
full
don't
cartridge.
think on Redemption, if it is, that settles it. That makes it easy for
I,
me. You
I
know my stance.
I think the full game is on the. I didn't see the download thing
There
on Red
wasn't
Dead.
one that I can see, but you never know. Especially
Yeah,
going
you
through
know.
that travesty that was the fucking GTA trilogy. You never
Yeah,
know.
it's coming out later, but I think it's actually on the cartridge. I think it's actually on the cartridge. I think.
All right. Well, I've sucked enough of your time. I greatly appreciate it, man. I always love it when guests are willing to come on, chew the fat with me. But let's take a quick scan through these comments. I don't know if I'll be able to read them all, but let's just take a look, see what we got, see if we got any interesting ones real quick, and then we'll let you go, man.
That's all good, man. I'm more than happy to hang around.
So, okay, just basically people waiting around for the stream, and thank you for that. I mean, again, that can't have been pleasant. Me trying to get everything started here, I'm not good at that. So, Excitebike 64. I remember my dad liking that one a lot. He was the 64 hound in the family. Hey, what's going on, Dish? Glad to see you're there, man. Loving the Metroid sales talk. Yeah, I can tell I've had Rush Dog says he can tell I've had a few sips of whiskey. I'm normally more clear with the Yamauchi quotes. Yeah, Hiroshi Yamauchi was the goat. That guy was something. Are you familiar with Yamauchi, OJ?
With who?
Hiroshi Yamauchi.
Oh, Yamauchi.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yamauchi. Yes, yeah. He's the goat, man. He was something.
Oh yeah.
Mean old man, but he knew how to run a company. I'll tell you. Although he did make some really fatal mistakes with the PlayStation and Square Enix.
Oh yeah.
That pride, man.
The RPG stuff was not a good, especially at that time.
Yep, I think that's pretty much it. So I guess I'll leave on this note. OJ, did you have fun?
I had tons of fun, man. It was great. I'd love to be back in the future.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, that's good, man. So I guess I don't completely suck as a host. So that's good. So, all righty. Well, OJ, thanks again a million, man. I'm gonna go ahead and plug all your shit again for all the fucking good it's gonna do. They know you a whole lot more than they know me, but I'll plug your shit down in the comments below. If you have not subscribed to this guy, seriously, in terms of breaking down the games industry, it doesn't get much realer. You guys absolutely should if you haven't already. I can't speak higher of him in terms of just cutting through the bullshit and the noise. It's great. Thanks for everybody for coming out, and keep on gaming on, guys. Just remember, I guess I'll leave on this note: you're not a captured audience. Never be afraid to walk away. I've walked away from entire generations, guys. If it's not doing it for you, walk away. If you enjoy it, game on.
Absolutely.
All right. Take care, guys. OJ, see you later, bud.
Take it easy.
And how do I end this? There we go.